Dave here. How are you? Today on the show, we're going to have a look at the tote box that I started last week. I actually finished it off during the week and did a little video on it, so you can have a look at that as well if you want to. I should put a link in the description down the bottom. And we're going to have a look at building a more traditional toolbox. Now, I've got these project panels that are 18 millimeters thick and 2 feet by 4 feet, so 1200 by 600. And I'm going to have a look at building a box using the dovetail jig, the Gifkins jig, and making something similar to my great-grandfather's toolbox. Now, this may be an episode that we're going to do all the designing and maybe cut the blanks out, much like we did last week. And then, I don't know if we'll hold off and do the dovetails the following week. We possibly will. But anyway, it should be an interesting show. I don't know if it's going to go full length today, but hang around and we'll get into it. Dave here. How are you? Dave here. How are you? Today is the 10th of April 2022. I hope you had a good week. We have had rain, and more rain. I just noticed here Peter's made a comment that it's still been pretty hot over in Western Australia. All right, I think the sound's coming through. Everyone's telling me how good, great, yep. All good, socials, morning good it is. Start packing the workshop. I do. Matthew, I'm well. How are you? All right, today on the show, we're going to try and build something similar to this. Now, this is my great-grandfather's toolbox. This is Arthur. If you haven't seen, I've done a series on this box and all of the tools that were in it. This I inherited because I was the only carpenter in the generation that I'm on. And so there you go. I don't know where it's going to go when I fall off my perch, but I know there's a few people are putting their hands up. Bianca will be one of them. Now, last week we started a small tote toolbox, a little wooden one, based on this guy here. This is the little Festool tote toolbox. And as I said last week, when I first saw this, I wasn't overly impressed. I thought, yeah, it's a box, you know, and I don't think I'm going to use one. But I found out after a while that the tools that I've got, the power tools, the Festool ones that I've got, live in a box specific for them. If you throw other tools in there with them, it really stuffs the system up. So these are for all the odds and sods, like screwdrivers and hammers and things like that. And we went through a couple of weeks ago what I recommend to go into a toolbox to live in the house or away from the shed. So something that's just an emergency toolbox, you could put it that way. Now, when I was talking to Bianca about it and said, you know, what are you going to do? She said, well, you know, I'd like one just like you showed me. And I said, well, I can't build one out of timber like that. It'd be just over the top. For $10 made out of plastic versus one out of timber, it's going to cost you a bomb to make one. But you can do it, obviously. So I suggested that I make a tote toolbox similar to this one, the Festool one. And her concern was if it was just a single compartment, she'd have to take tools out all over the place to be able to get to them. So I decided to do a double-sided toolbox and exactly the same as that guy there, or very close to it. I did a quick video on how I did this, like we started it on the show last week, and it was kind of a bit labored. I had a few people say, you know, you wasted 15 minutes on mucking around with the table saw and then using the track saw. Why didn't you just go straight to the Capex? Well, I could have used the Capex, but then I have to flip it over on 45, and sometimes the cuts aren't going to be as accurate as I can get on the table, on here, on the Stanton bench. And that's the way I went. The handle is plywood, but it's the same kind of timber as well, it's actually hoop pine on this one. It's the same kind of, very similar to the radiata pine that's on the outside. These are splines that I did with Brazilian bloodwood, just to give it a bit of punch. And they've come up quite nicely. As I say, there's a video link in the description box down the bottom to the 10-minute build. So everything's sped up and shows you exactly how I did it. There's hardly any talking, which will make a lot of people very happy. So there you go. It's very, very handy. This little guy here featured in the video a lot. Now this is part of the spline material, and I use this as a story stick. So you'll see me inside the video. I've put it down inside the box like that, and I put a little mark on the edge. I didn't explain why I did that. Well, that mark that is just there, I don't know if you can see that, is where I had to stop the roundover on the handle here. So as I'm coming down here, the roundover actually stopped rather than have the roundover go down there, and it looked really lame inside. So that was that, and then I thought, well, while I've got this in my hand, it's a nice width for the rest of it, so that went in to be the width of the handle all the way around. And down at the bottom, that was kind of, you know, I had a look at it and thought, yeah, that's close enough. The reason that is way open down here is if you've got a tool that's larger than just one compartment, it can spread over the two compartments. Yeah. So it's a nice little box, you know. It's ply, it's cheap pine that I was going to throw in the bin. It's just these little short pieces, and the handle, bit of scrap plywood that was, again, was just left over from another project. And I think it looks half decent. So Bianca, that one's yours, if you want it. If not, I don't know. I might keep it. I know that sounds a bit flippant, but it's not meant to be. It's just, my joy is from making the projects. When I finished it, I lose interest in it pretty quickly, unless it's stuff that I'm making for the workshop, and that's a different story. Because it's just, I have an organizational thing where, possibly OCD, obsessive compulsive order. That's what I have. There is no such thing as OCD. It's OCO. You ask anyone in my family, they'll tell you. All right, now this week, we are going to, first of all, measure up the toolbox here, and I have to shrink things down on it. Now, the reason, I'll just go to a better camera for this and you'll be able to see it a little bit better. There, how's that? So these guys were this size because the carpenters back then, in Arthur's period, didn't really have handheld electric power saws for ripping. They used to have to use a long handheld rip saw. I'll get one down, I'll show you the kind of things that they had to use. Actually, I can get all of these down because it'll give you an indication of where I'm at. Now, I haven't cleaned this one up. This is basically original, and you can see the length of it. That's a dirty big long saw. It's a rip saw because all of the teeth you can see, the back of them are basically 90 degrees, and a kind of a 35-degree angle, I guess, on the rake, and all of the teeth are sharpened. All of the teeth here are sharpened like a chisel, not pointy like other saws blades are. Let me get one of these little jack saws. This is kind of a modern day. I'll turn around this way so we're not doing any advertising for anyone. These are all pointy, so they're designed to actually cut through the fibers as you're going across, like little knives. Rip saws, different story. These guys, a set of chisels that as you're going along the grain, is just punching the grain out like a chisel, like going along with a chisel, but a multi-set. And then, of course, the circular saw is a round blade with chisels, and that's the one I'm going to use today on the table saw. I've got one of those, the rip saw blade in it. It's not too difficult to understand all of this, but it does help if someone explains it around the edges. Now, this should have been able to fit inside Arthur's toolbox. And I can show you there, it's a close fit. Hence, the toolboxes were this long. Now we don't need the toolbox to be that long anymore. And as a matter of fact, it's going to be easier to carry it because when these things are loaded with tools, you need some guns to pick these things up. They're heavy, very, very heavy and very well built. And that's one of the reasons they're all done with dovetails. We'll be using Cole's Gifkins jig, this guy here, to create this box. And that's one of the first parts that's going to be an issue for us. The reason being, this particular Gifkins jig I've got is not the jumbo jig. So this will only go up to 1 foot. Basically 312 millimeters is its maximum. 304 point something is 12 inches. So it will cover that. So I have to work out whether I'm going to keep this box that I build at 1 foot high. And I'll tell you how tall this one is now at the moment. It is 440 millimeters overall in height, which is very, very close to 18 inches. Too big for that jig. Now, I don't want to bother Cole and say, Cole, send me down a jumbo jig just for the show. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to rip this board that I've got. Now I'm going to use, pardon me if I sniffle a little bit, it's basically after the COVID thing. I've got this kind of tickle. I hope it isn't long COVID. Let's me go back to this other camera. This one here. These are a pine panel that I've got from Bunnings, and I explained to you the other week. It's a big box store. I'm sure these things are around the world conventional. Has the name of the stuff here. I like this particular one, this particular board, because it's not finger jointed along here. It's just strips of timber that have been laminated. So all the hard work is done for me. And it's a large size panel that I can take out of whatever I want. Because if I was to buy this in solid timber, there's two things that would affect me big time. The price. It'd be phenomenally expensive. It's very, very hard to get good, stable timber this wide. You know, back in the day, this is kauri pine. Arthur would have been able to source this quite easily. Normally, these are an apprentice's job. So when they start off their apprenticeship, they make their toolbox. So I had to do the same thing when I started off my apprenticeship. I didn't make this type of one. I made a more modern one, which had a fold down front, and the saws were kept in the front, had a drawer at the top, and the rest of the stuff was in the bottom. Not as sexy as this one, but you know, child apprentice in the 70s, that's what we made. It was plywood, and I'm waffling on again. Anyway, so this timber, because it's made of strips of timber around about 50 millimeters wide each piece, and because it's nearly all quarter sawn, I don't know if you can see it, but just about all of that is quarter sawn. Now, when I bought the panels, I've got a few of them. I did like I did in that video that I did recently. So I go down there, and the panels are in a shelf sideways. You cannot see the end grain. So I pull them all out and I look and I check for the ones that have got pretty close to being quarter sawn. Now, someone also made comment on the video about the quarter sawn. What is quarter sawn? What's live sawn? Well, and people were trying to correct me on what type. It's not wood, it's timber, and I understand that. I understand in different countries it's going to be specified as timber. In Australia, we just call it timber. In the States, I guess you guys call it wood. So I had to make comment that, well, we live in a global society now, and so a lot of the things are going to be correct. We're using different types of spelling where, 20 years ago, people in Australia would have had a heart attack if I'd spelt, let's say, wagon with one G instead of two Gs, or vice versa. I don't know. All right, so we've got these panels. They're 4 feet by 2 feet, or 600 wide by 1200 long, and 18 millimeters thick, nearly 3/4 of an inch. I can put, as I said, up to 12 inches there. Now, I'm wondering whether or not I should rip this right down the middle and make it two 12-inch pieces, or whether I should rip it to half of 450, which would be 225, and make two pieces that I can glue back together again after I've done the dovetailing to get the height. And that might be the way that I go. Then I'm going to have one piece, 225, 450, I'm going to have a piece 150 wide. Now that 150 wide piece I can rip up to use for other parts inside the box. So then do I need to make it 912 long? Or can I get, oh, thank you, Tommy. It's very generous. Tommy, for some strange reason, has decided to just shop me $4.99 through the chat. You can do that as well if you want to, but I never asked for that. That's just very generous. Thank you, Tommy. So the length, I don't think I need to make it that long anymore. The reason, if I make it 912 long out of a 1200 long panel, I'm only going to end up with just maybe 11 inches wide. And the depth of the box this way, I think we need to make it closer to what it actually is, and I'll measure that. So that one's 432. So again, just under 18 inches. So if I was to make it, let me see. 400 maybe? 400 by 750, that could work well. And then the height is good because inside here, there'll be a couple of sliding tills. So that's boxes that are going to hold smaller things like chisels and stuff like that. And they slide backwards and forwards. So that might be good. That might be good. I haven't been reading the chat much. I'm going to have a quick read of the chat and see what's been happening here. Bianca, you reckon it's going to you? Reading. Vicky's market went well yesterday, and she's at Blackheath today. So if you're around about at Blackheath, go to the produce market up there, and you can score something from her. Or you can just go on to vickysvodka.com.au. VIKISVODKA.com.au. And away you go. Dave, all viewers, hope all is well. Looking forward to this build. Yeah, me too. It's not going to be a rush. I'm going to take my time with this. We'll probably build this over the next 3 days. What I'm planning on doing is doing the dovetails on one section, the lower section, and then possibly doing the dovetails on the top section on a show next week. We'll rip things and get it all ready this week and do the design. We're going through the design process at the moment. I'm just sharing with you when I look at a project, the things that I consider and also how I'm going to go about maximizing the material available to me without wasting any. Because timber's a resource that at the moment is pretty expensive, to put it bluntly. I'm quickly reading down here something about the weather. Built the box out of scraps to make a tote style one with some internal slots and holes for little organizations. Just one half of the tote. That's a good idea, Matthew. Yes, Bianca, you want it. Okay, so please make sure you take some photos for the show. It sounds like a nice tote. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, good to hear. Good evening from Texas. Lone Dog Workshop. Morning, all happy at the blue sky. Yes. Jeremy. Sorry, mate, we just ran out of time and it was bucketing rain when we were packing up, and Vicky and I just wanted to get home And sorry, the invitation for coffee at your place was wonderful, but we just looked at each other and said, we just got to go home. We're stuffed. We got up at 4 o'clock to hit the road, to get down to Barrel from our place, and setting up in pouring down rain, and then, on and off during the day, and then pouring down when we packed up, and then, no. So thank you very much for the offer. Guy, hello Dave and chat. All right, so let's get back into it. I'm going to get a piece of paper and we're going to do some drawings so that I can remember what I decide on doing, because that's half the problem sometimes. Let's go to CarlCam. Let me see. There we go. All right, so the box, we're going to draw a picture like so, which will be plan, and end elevation, and front elevation. Now, I don't know if you can see those. Again, this is what I do. This is from basic tech drawing stuff from when I was a kid at school. This is how we'd set it all out. And I just noticed there that I may be upsetting some people by having the name of that company there, so I'll flip it over. I don't really know what the problem is, but some people do object and they let me know. So there we go. I don't know if you can see that very well. I'm going to wait for it to come up on the other screen just over here, and I'll be able to see what you guys see. I'm going to come in a little bit closer. And I can do that because this is a 4K camera. All I'm doing is doing a digital zoom now. And there we go. That's a bit easier to see. Okay, so CAD is cardboard aided design, wasn't it? All right, so the plan, the overall length, we were talking about 750 millimeters this way, not 756, Dave. And it can be rough, just as long as it's a reminder for me. And this way, I think we'll keep it 75 from 1200. Is 5, 8 is 4. Yeah, 445, 450. It might work. It might work. So let's make this instead. We'll make that 745. This is going to allow for cutting. And then this way we'll go 445. And we'll add those together again, 745. I like to do this so that I just am keeping a check. So I know where I'm at. 0, 0, 4, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1190. And I'm happy with that because that's going to be less than 1200. That's good. Now, Baroness is down here looking for lizards. But did I mention it's been wet? Have a look at this. This is one of the planes out of Arthur's toolbox. And see the mold on it? It's one of the reasons why I've got the toolbox out. I need to clean it out. I'm going to give it a little bit of a spray with some vinegar and clean the tools up with vinegar as well. Morning, Cole. So Cole's just joined the conversation. So Cole, what's this? I have a link to Cole's jig if you're interested. You just check in the description box below the video and you'll see that's the jig that I'm going to be using on this box. So we'll use that next week. Olive oil for mold, hey? All right, so that's the sizes that we're going to be. So 745 by 445. The height, well, if I do 745, it means I can get one side and one end out of this board here. You're excited, Cole. Thought you might be. So that means I can get all of one level out of a board. I want to get a lid out of a board. I want to get some support pieces for the floor for this box out of a board. And I want to get a second level. So I think I'll be using 3 of these panels to do the whole box. And I think that's going to be pretty economical. It's going to be around about $120 for the timber for the whole box if I use these things. And if I do it sensibly. Now the height, 225, let's make it 445 as well in height. I'll make it 440, because then what I can do is do 2 at 220 each, like so. I'll have a 220 high and a 220 high here. These will both be dovetailed to each other. So dovetail corner here, dovetails, dovetails, dovetails. And then I will domino the 2 pieces together. I think that's the way that I'm going to do it. The 2 units, and then sand it. And it should end up being quite nice. I just have to look at program where I'm going to put the dovetails in, so the dovetails look as though they're a continuation right the way through. So there's another consideration while I'm doing the planning part. So the front elevation, again, we're looking at 440 and 750, 745. All right, now we've got that, we need to do some takeoff from here. Now this is external dimensions, so I will make it a little easier to understand that by drawing some lines on the inside, like that. And then here, what I normally do is dotted lines to show that there's going to be thickness. The lid will be going on top of this, so it will hang over the edge a little bit, and we'll do a really nice detail on that, exactly the same as Arthur has done. And then down the bottom here, I'm going to put a skirting board to dress it up. It doesn't really need it, but I'll do it. And then in here, we're going to have 2 little cross sections that are going to support a false floor through here. And then underneath here, I may also put some feet out of something, maybe like a hard plastic with a screw through it, screw through there to keep it off the ground. Now, mine, I've just put a couple of pieces of 2x1 under here. This is Arthur's one. And whilst that works okay, it's not really conducive to sliding around on a floor without marking. I want these to be that kind of hard plastic that doesn't mark the floor. And we'll hide those a little bit by this skirting board. So that's the plan. Then inside there's going to be a couple of sliding tills. So we'll put a little slide there and a little guy here. And that will support 2 sliding boxes that will carry all the smaller things like screwdrivers and what have you. And they will slide over the top of each other, or both on top, so you can get to the tools below. This is basically the whole design. Clove, okay, you need the jumbo jig for that width. Cole, I was talking about this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to possibly make it out of, let's go to the other camera. I'm going to do it in 2 pieces. So I'm going to use this guy because I've got it. I'm going to do 2 sections of box. And I may even turn it into some kind of sexy thing as well, where I can lift the top section of box with the lid off. So the top section with the sliding tills could lift off. And then you have the main section of the toolbox underneath there. You know what? I think that's going to be an idea. The dominoes, I'll make the dominoes slightly, I'm going to sand them a little bit So they'll glue into the bottom piece. I might even make them glue into the top piece, and when you put it back over the top of the bottom, it locks on, so that when you take it off, the dominoes will act as little legs to hold it up when you move it. And I may even put a floor in that one as well. So this could be a very interesting toolbox. And I'd have little sliding latches that lock on, so it locks the bottom onto the top, so you can pick it all up. The handles will go in the bottom section. They'll take all the load, because if we put the handles in the top section, you're relying on those couple of latches that are holding it together. Yeah, I think that, what are your ideas? What do you think? Do you think that if I do it, it's segmented so that there's actually two toolboxes in one with the sliding tills, and the other one is just with all the big stuff in the bottom? Dominoes would work great. Is it possible that you can get the camera to focus on the drawing? You can hear the wheels turning from there. Yeah, look, what I'll do is I'll bring this drawing up closer. Now, the reason that it wasn't focusing on the drawing while I was doing it was because there was no, I didn't have any black to give it the camera contrast. So that should be enough for you to see the drawing. Make it two boxes. I think so. I haven't seen that done before. And remember, we're trying to economize on material. And although Cole has a jumbo jig, Cole, do you want to let people know what width the jumbo jig will do up to? It would possibly do something about this size, but you know, I really don't want to go down that track, because this is only going to be a one-off. And it's forced me to make a thought about doing something different. So we've still got some people watching, which I find fascinating, because there's a lot of people get bored with the design process, or with me going duh. and generally chatting. No rain today. There you go. Is that enough chat for you? So I think that'll work well. I think so. And I may even work something with, instead of sliding tills, 480. It would do what I'm after then. Instead of sliding tills, make something like this that would go in the top, and you could lift it out by the handle. So a very large tote toolbox in the top that lives inside. I think that's what we're going to do. Do you get excited about this? One of the things I love about, make it like two sustainers. Yep. For your bicycle to 84 by 35, come on. Okay. Add a kind of lock to keep top and bottom together. Exactly right, Giles. Yes. I was just saying that doing this stuff, working with wood and spending a bit of time having a think about what you're going to do first, is one of the great things about woodwork. It's your design. You come up with whatever you want, and then if you can take it from here to there, or to that little tote box, great. That puts a big smile on Dave's face. Okay, let's not dally anymore. We'll strip the plastic off this, and then we'll go over to the table saw, and we'll rip the pieces up. As I said before, this I like because it's just straight out lengths of pine, and it's not finger jointed. There's probably easier ways to take this off, but I'm not doing it. And as I said, I spent a lot of time going through the piles and found things that were as close as to quarter sawn as I could. So there's the panel, and you can see the end. There's one or two pieces that aren't, that are basically live sawn. So for those that don't know, this piece here, that one, is getting towards live sawn. This is pretty much quarter sawn, so is this, So is this, so is this, so are the rest of them. Now the thing with these guys as well, that you have to be aware that when they run them through the sander, there's an imperfection there too, I'll put that on the outside. When they run them through the sander, they've got a big drum sander, they run these things through. Towards the edge, because it hasn't got timber, let me spin it around this way, towards the edge, because there's no timber here supporting the drum, and it's pushing down so hard, you will get a little bit of a roll off, only a tiny little bit. So that's something to be aware of when you're using these boards. The edge might just have a little bit of a taper off. All right. I'm not going to worry about it. Just letting you know. All right. I'll get one of those other panels. I say this is the absolute cheapest way. This is probably cheaper than plywood at the moment. Like if you were to do this out of Baltic birch, which is almost impossible to get these days because it's 80%, I believe, of it comes from Russia. And with the turmoil that the world is in at the moment, imports aren't really happening from that part of the world. And it's a crying shame. I wish everyone would just snap out of it and get on with each other again. But who am I? My job as an influencer only goes so far. I can't change world politics. Well, I can by voting, but that's about it. This has got a slight cup in it. 2 boxes interlocking with dominoes glued into the top section, allowing it to rest on them as feet. Why not have a handle on each box? You know what, Carl? I'm starting to think the same way. I think that's a good idea. I'm listening. I'm reading and processing and running a show and thinking about the next thing to happen. So I'm going to spin over here. We'll go to the camera. I'm going to joint the edges first. So I'll come around to the other camera. Have a quick coffee to settle the throat. As I said, it's just a little bit of a residual from the COVID, I think. Just a little bit tickly throat. Yep. Nathan, I try not to make political comment. I can comment on the state of the world at the present, which is not good, but I can't really... I know there's people with different political views, and I do not want to upset from one side to the other. I'm kind of on the fence at the moment. I don't know what the hell to do. You know that I love to look after the environment. That's why I invested so much money in these solar panels. But at the same time, we've got to be able to earn some dollars as well. So I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I don't know what. I've considered even doing a donkey vote and thought, stuff it, I don't want to know. But if everyone does that, bloody hell, we may as well be ostriches and stick our head in the sand. I don't want to do that. I want to be a part of the process, and I want things to get better. That's fair. I want it to be fair for people. I can't really say anymore. All right, let's go to camera 3. And you can see the time on the clubhouse wall over there. Let me see, I might need to just tip that camera up a little bit. Yes, I will. I'll tip it up just a little bit. How's that? Is that looking any good? Yep, not too bad. The design and thought process is an interesting part. It is indeed, John. All right. Now, this jointer has a European style fence. It's not the style that's got the lamb chop or mutton chop guard that swings out of the way as you're pushing stuff across. There's a couple of things you can do. You can either pull it back a little bit and use the knives that are right at the back against the fence, or you can release the fence and bring it forward and then bring this forward again. But I find if I do that, I end up with an obstacle here as I'm pushing stuff across, and I don't like that. So I normally try and keep it right to the back, and I have the guard giving me enough room to put the piece of wood vertical, and I make sure nothing is in the way here or for the exit. And I also have the automatic blast gate connected, so it should open up for me. I'll shut that other one there and they're shut. Cool. So I'll wear the ear and eye protection. I'm going to joint 4 edges and then we'll rip it on the table saw and joint it again. Something's not going quite right there. That's better. All right, the depth of cut, I'm going to go down to 1 millimeter. And these boards are normally pretty straight anyway, but I like to run them over the jointer just to tidy them up. Turn her on. Dust extraction's all working. Now, where my finger there is there, I'm pretty safe. I'm keeping the board pushed against the fence. I've already set the fence at 90 degrees to the table, to the outfit table in particular. And the weight of the board is going to be enough to hold it down onto the outfit table. That's the reference that we really need to be working. You can see it's up a little bit here. That's what we're getting rid of. And pushing down on the end pretty substantially now, so we don't get any of that tipping happen. And that, my friends, is a very nice edge and very straight. I spent a lot of time tuning this up. I did a video on how to do it, if you're interested in watching it. Oop. On this particular style of machine. This one is made, this is a Carpenter model. There are other ones that are out there, similar design. Jet and Hammer have them. All different widths. This one is a 10-inch or 250 millimeters. There's a 310 or 312. And there's 16-inch models. And probably a whole lot bigger than that I don't know about. I am favouring the direction of the grain. You can see here, the grain is on this last piece, this is only 2 inches wide. The grain is falling this direction till it gets to here and then it falls away again. So overall, this is the right direction. This one here, I will start at that end and go this way because the grain is coming up. Very gradual, but it is going that direction. With the spiral heads, or with the helical head on this, it doesn't really matter that much, but always go with the direction that's best for the grain. There we go. I have 2 panels dressed. Now I can put them up the side here. And the dust will turn off. I love it. I have links. I have links for these automatic blast gates if you're interested. They're in the description box. No affiliation with them apart from the fact that they gave me one and I bought the rest of them from them because I was so impressed with them. Okay. I'm going to do a quick read back here before we go to the other part. Oh, you all went quiet while I was doing the jointing. All right, so now I'm going to go to the table saw. We've got the plan, remember? So we're doing this for 2 panels. I have to get 2 at 220 each. And then we need to make the length, which I've got there as well. So sometimes what I do also is I do a cutting list. And it will be specific to the information here, so I don't have to kind of rethink reading off the plan. I have everything itemized, and I should have done that. Give me a sec, I'll just swing this camera around this way. I have Baroness here with me. Come here. Come here. Come and say hello. She hasn't been on the camera for a while. There you go. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Sit. 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 Say hello to everyone. Yes, you're a good girl. Down you hop. You're going to play with Pierre. All right. What have we got? 220 millimeters wide. So I'll get 4 pieces, 220. Switch the cameras. Yes, Baroness just read that, Bink, and she said, hello, hello. No, she didn't. She's a dog. She can't read. She can read your mind, though. It's amazing. All right, that's looking a little bit better. 220. Slide the thing back. 220 millimeters. Should fit in that jig knife. So I'm going to go to 221 to allow me enough room to run the pieces over the jointer again. The height of this is the rip saw. I've got the dog down here with me as well. To the gullet, which is correct. Out of the way, Nessie. Out of the way. Actually, I'm going to quickly throw the dust extraction port on, so I'm not exposing anything. That one and this one. This is not a saw stop. I know that a lot of people are using saw stop table saws. This is a Carpenter table saw. I've had it for years. This is a saw stop dust hood that I put onto the Carpenter splitter, and it took me a lot of time. So I used the saw stop splitter, put it over the top of this as a template, marked all the areas where I had to drill holes through mine because the saw stop model here did not work on what I have down there. Let me just raise that all the way up. I'll take the riving knife out and put this guy in. Where are we? Spin it around a little bit further that way, I think. That should lower down. Yes, that'll be fine. And then this piece of wood in here again. There's Pierre. What are you up to, buddy? I know what's going to happen. They're going to go running past me, chasing each other, and tear the cable out from this particular camera. I should have been back up on the ones that I made. I've been a bit lazy and just put it on the tripods. Today, drop that down, put this in here, and up to the top there. And that's good. table saw, open that up. And that is also good. And one last thing I want to do is put the clear cut stock guides on. These are great. They really are good. Move that down out of the way for the moment. I said 221. I'll move this back out of the way for the moment so I can get the stock guides to the right height. Like so. And like so. I had one person say, yeah, you've made a tote box out of some scrap timber and $20,000 worth of tools. But the thing is, I made comment when I first started this gig that I plan to have 20 years of mucking around and enjoying myself here. I invested early in what I do, and I've enjoyed every second of it since then. I could have struggled through and said, oh, no, I'm not going to spend my money there. I'll do it something else. You know, I worked hard all my life. This is my reward, and I love it. And being able to use sexy things like this, love it. One last thing we'll put on there is this guy. This is an extra support this direction while I'm pushing timber through. I'll start with this board here first. Bit of mucking around, but I feel very, very safe. And I think we'll fit in there with all those cables there still. Fine. All right, saw. Beautiful. See that? Everything's held. There's no kickback happening. Everything's supported back here. The stock guides, I can drop that down a little bit lower. I should have tightened up a little bit more. Are holding it all for me up against the fence and stopping any kickback, so I feel extremely safe. No dust. Can you see any dust? And I'm leaning over here and I feel safe because of this beautiful big guard. 220, that's one. And I'll flip her over to the jointed side. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move that one down the track a little bit further. Well, that's the plan. I don't think I will be. I'll just make sure that these cables are over there a little bit. Should be okay. Yep, that's snuck it in. Now this is a spare for doing other things on the box, and I'll use them up, don't worry about that. We'll rip this one. it's a pain because I've got that first stock guide so close there. Let's push that back a little. There we go. All right, take them over to the jointer, run them through there. Don't be tempted to go like that, because you might just flick your fingers right over the blades without thinking about it. So I always use a bit of compressed air from the lungs. Interesting question there. Groove jets, the table saw blade, the cutter's teeth, high TPI. No, there's 24 teeth per inch in that blade. It's a 10-inch blade, so it's 250 millimeters diameter, 24 tooth for ripping. For cross-cutting, I normally use something maybe 96 teeth or 80 teeth. Depends on the diameter of the blade. I think the 12-inch blade is a 96 and the 10 inches is 72 or 80. And then there's all sorts of other blades for different products. Let me have a... Montana, g'day James, how are you? Pierre's eating habits are a whole lot better. Yes, that's quite low, isn't it? Yes, and it does a lovely job. Like, you have a look at those boards I've just cut. They're nice and clean, both sides, and it just does a lovely job. The machines I've got are fantastic. So Pierre, let me see if he's here still. G'day, buddy. Come on, come and say hello. Yes, he hasn't been eating poo lately. He's been a good dog. I don't know, maybe I've changed his diet a little bit, but someone said, it was a gentleman from England who's actually vision impaired, has a guide dog, and he was telling me that his guide dog also used to eat poop. It'd be very hard for someone in that situation because they wouldn't be able to see it, you'd smell it. But he said he was told to feed the dog some pineapple as well, and they don't like the taste. So I considered giving him some pineapple, but he's been pretty good, so it's okay. He's on a diet of tuna and rice and egg at the moment. He's spoiled, spoiled rotten. But he had this yeast infection in his ears, and he couldn't hear a thing. And I put him on this medication, or the vet put him on this medication. I had to put it twice a day, and that's all over now. So maybe all that part's gone as well. But I don't dare feed him anything that could trigger that yeast infection again. They tell me it's on their body all the time, so I'm going to wash him constantly. And also, I don't give him any red meat, and I don't give him any chicken, because apparently the stories are that they help yeast infections kick on, and it's just horrible. He's in agony when he has this thing in his ears. Rubs his face raw, but he's looking really good now, and he's becoming a good dog, and he's plays with Baroness, and they're quite happy together. Anyway, look, I think that you've seen what we've done so far. What I'm going to do during the week is I'm going to dock these to length, the length that I need, and then also I will dovetail one full section for the bottom. We'll dovetail the other piece on the show next week. I think that's the best way to do it. So then you get to see the product before I even start the show. Like at the beginning of the show, I'll show you the bottom of the box, and then the next part will be actually using Cole's jig and how we set it up. It's a bit of revision for me and a bit of revision for people that have actually watched the show where we did that. Or you can actually go over to not Carl's, I just saw Carl made a comment, over to Cole's website, and Cole has got so many videos of his show. I'm sure if you were to be able to filter through the live streams that he's got, you could find the videos on him using his dovetail jig, because he's the master of it. He sets it up. Or if you want to, you have a look back through my videos where Cole and Pam came down and gave me one of their jigs as a thank you for having them on my show, which was very much appreciated. And we go through using the jig on the show. A bit of mucking around at the same time. Anyway, that's it for the show. I hope you look after yourselves. Have a nice week in front of you. I'm going to read out the patron's name. We're going to have the Patreon chat in a minute after the show as well. These are people that are on a certain level and above. There's one of the little perks that they get to have their name read out on the show. And it's Johannes Mohr, John Parra, Vincent Ngian, Peter Woolworth, Father Brett Guthrie, Mike Deam, Wayne Cargill, Mr. Blue Eyes, John Peckham, Graeme Bland, Russell Hibbs, and Seamus. Thank you so much, guys. And for all of my patrons, it really does help. It puts food on the table during the week, and Vicky and I very much appreciate that. All right, look after yourselves. Be nice to each other. I'm reading down through here. Thanks a lot, Dave. Night chat. See you next week, everyone. Remember, if you want to be in the chat, you have to become a patron. All right, let me see if we've got it all here. Close the show video. Look after yourselves, be nice to each other, and I shall see you next week.